Hey, hey. Okay, so the book is over. You've read it all. And now I'm going to hit you with the bonus round. Okay, this is going to be the outtakes or the questions, just depending on what my producer, Chuck Pryor, wants to do and how nice he's going to be to me. So, Chuck, be nice. If you throw in any of my, I don't know, burping or something really gross that I did during the filming, this is where you're going to add it. But in the meantime, I actually have some questions that have been assembled from readers that on Goodreads or on my website or wherever that they really want to know about Made for Me. So this is it. Okay, so the pink ones represent kind of romantic things. The blue represent things about Switzerland or what have you. And then yellow's a wild card. Okay, so my kids assembled these things and I have no idea what's on them, so I'm going to go for it. Okay, and try and be fast about this because, you know, I know your time is super precious. Okay. So, did you have inspiration for Andre? When, where, the details? Okay, so if you're just skipping to this part and you haven't, read or listened to the rest of the book, Andre is buff and he's hot. And yes, so there's a little funny story about this. So the place I described in the book, the penthouse apartment, my husband and I actually rented that off VRBO and it was owned by one of 5 apartments around Zurich and Geneva, owned by this female physician that I also describe just a little bit in the book. Anyway, so one day we've been there, I don't know, like a week and a half, and we've been all around, and my husband's just wiped out. So he's like, I'm gonna take a nap. It's the middle of the afternoon in Zurich, and so I'm like, I'm peacing out. I'm gonna leave. So I go down the walkway. It's just on Seefeldstrasse, and I go down into the center of Zurich. It's only 10-minute walk away, and lo, I go into this mart, and I'm getting some things, chocolate mostly, and there's kind of a line, and right behind me is this, I swear to you, most gorgeous man I've ever seen in my entire life. And I never looked, but I couldn't help myself. I just looked at him, and I was so Italian for a second. I just scoped him up and down. It was really awful, but I couldn't help it. And I thought, well, I'm an author. He'll be in one of my books. Well, anyway, so I start talking to him, and he looks exactly like I described him, 5 o'clock shadow, perfectly manicured, dark hair, and he's wearing this white ribbed shirt, very clearly worked out, and he had some yogurt and blueberries. And truly, I just looked at him, I said, this is all you're eating? And it was a really funny conversation. He ended up in my book. So that was the details. And I went back to the apartment and my husband asked me about it. I said, I found the man for my book. And he's like, good for you. That's really great. So they do exist, ladies. They all exist over in Zurich. Okay, second question. Have you been to St. Moritz? Was the house that you described real? Okay, so yes, been to St. Moritz quite a few times, but this happened to be when I was writing A Convenient Date, because they do have a little overseas jaunt that they go over to, and when it was on that trip that we took the gondola up and we were going over some amazing houses. And so when we got down off the gondola, we actually drove around, and there's no gates anywhere, okay? Because clearly if you're gonna spend the time and the effort to go up to St. Moritz, I don't know, they're not worried about being robbed. It's kind of a funny thing. So literally, we go and the gate's wide open. I mean, there was one gate in the very, very back part of the house, but it was empty because it was summer. No one wants to be in St. Moritz in the summer. They all want to be there in the winter. So we're shameless, of course, shameless Americans. And I said, go, let's do it. So we drove on the property. I took some pictures and we left. So that was my very vagabond experience, and it was amazing. And I had to put in there a Russian oligarch because I'm sure that's the only person who could afford that in the entire world. Okay. Yellow. How do you know about gold trading? Well, I actually have some friends in the gold trading business, and so I tried to keep that realistic. And my first couple passes of the book, I was told I had way too much technical detail and everyone's going to get super bored. And as an author, you actually want to be legitimate, and the fine line is telling everybody how much you know and boring them to death, or telling them just enough so they understand that you did your research and so it's legitimate. So I kind of erred first on that side, and then it all got ripped out by my editors, and then what you have is just the bare essentials to show you that Daniel is super good at what she does. Okay, back to the pink card, the romance card. Has your heart ever been shattered like Andre and Lars? There's a song from the 70s, torn between two lovers, feeling like a fool, something like that. I don't know, it's before my time. No, I've actually never been torn between two lovers. I've never been in the position to have two gorgeous men both be in love with me and being in love with both of them. So no, That's never been a part of my existence, and that's why it is called fiction, because I lived out a little bit of a fantasy there. Okay, on to the next one. The scene up in the Alps, are they real? Yes, they are. Okay, so every time we go through, usually we go into Zurich, and then we go through the Alps to different directions, and then go over into Lake Como or just wherever. And but the very first trip was the most memorable, I have to admit. And the moo cows, I'm a cow fan. I don't know, it's a weird thing. My father was a farmer, so I guess I love cows. Anyway, as you're going up, there's a sexy scene in the book about Andre and Danielle riding their motorcycle up, and there's cows. Well, literally we stop the car, and they're these most gorgeous cows. Their coats look like cashmere, and they're so soft. They're literally as smooth as cashmere. I'm not kidding you. Anyway, they have these huge, big, glorious Swiss cowbells, and they're so tame. They just come right up to you and you pet them. So I have a ton of pictures on my computer with, my Swiss cows. So yeah, those are all real. And I had to find a place for the cows in my book. Okay, yellow wild card. Do these books, embarrass your husband? Okay, and there's a funny story about this. So when I was writing, again, A Convenient Date, I was just starting to formulate doing a 2 or 3 book series set over in Switzerland and then all the surrounding countries, because I thought it would be really exotic and really fun. And a lot of Americans actually aren't very interested in traveling, I found. They like Mexico or Hawaii or wherever, but I haven't really run into a lot of people that have actually been over into this area. So when I'm writing Convenient Date, imagine this, okay? We're on Lake Zurich on the waterfront. Lake Zurich is actually really big, but we're kind of in the downtown area. And you have to bear in mind that we're very conscious of being loud Americans, and so we always try to be really quiet and not really speak loudly and whatever. So, but I'm on Lake Zurich, and Roger says, well, how's the book going, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I'll read you a scene from this. So I whip out my iPhone, and I start reading this scene. And it's kind of a passionate scene. It's not X-rated or anything, but, it's in my books, and so it's kind of getting your pulse rate rising. And I start to giggle because it sounds so silly when you're reading this, and it's the middle of the day. It's not like it's dark and romantic by a fireplace. I mean, literally, it's the middle of the day. There's people swimming, and the sun is setting, but I start laughing, and Roger, he literally he thinks it's so funny. He can't believe, A, I'm writing it, B, people want to read it, and C, like 60% of my readers are men. And I have been told that they read for 2 reasons. One, to kind of understand the female psyche and what we're thinking, and 2, to get ideas for how to be more romantic. So as Roger is listening to me, we are cracking up, and we're getting louder and louder, and then people are starting to look at us, and we can't stop ourselves. And so, is he embarrassed? He says I am a lot more passionate actually when I write my women's fiction books, and so he'll say, okay, can you finish up your nonfiction, or can you finish up Chambers or your action adventure, because I want you to get back writing your women's fiction. And there's a reason. So I think he balances being embarrassed with the other fringe benefits that he sees from women's fiction. Okay. Next one, we only have a couple more. So downtown Zurich, so what stands out? Clubs, Andre's and Lars's homes, whatever. So all the clubs and restaurants, we actually went to, and they do exist, and all the wrought iron and, urban elegance that I described, that's all true. But one thing that actually does stand out is we're driving by, and you can see where people choose to live downtown, and there are the outskirts where there's kind of like row houses, if you will, but right downtown there is this building that just has this indelible memory in my mind, because it's like a mini Waldorf Astoria, and the bellmen, I'm not kidding you, are in these tuxedos essentially, and we happened to be going by when this man, he probably was in his mid-40s, was coming out with 2 young children, maybe 8 or something like that, 8 to 10, 1 boy, 1 girl. And I'm not kidding you. It looked exactly like The Sound of Music when Captain Von Trapp is in front of his huge mansion and the kids are all in uniforms. That's exactly what it looked like. And I thought, okay, there's the 1% of the world. You know, people think, you know, they have a lot of money, it's the 1%. And then there's like this upper echelon that's so high up in the clouds you can't even understand it. That's like the 0.00001 of the 1%. That was it. So even though that didn't make it into my book, that's where I based Andre and Lars to have their apartment, because I thought this is where the real money's at. Okay, 2 left. This is the wild card, the yellow one. Some of the details about Zurich are odd, like the bullet-shaped latrines in the parks, the motion detector water fountains. Okay, yes, is this all true? And yes, it is. So if you fly into Zurich or some of the other towns in Switzerland, it's kind of like another world, you know? I mean, everything from the trams that are kind of glowing blue that are very, you know, otherworldly, and then the motion detection water fountains, in fact, do exist. So you see a water fountain, you want some water, and it just starts, you know, it just senses your presence and it starts. And all of the other things, the latrines in the park, so you go in these bullet-shaped things, and first of all, they're like the most sanitary thing. They're probably cleaner than my own bathrooms, okay, at home, and they're all like stainless steel. And you sit down, and the seats then they come up, and so you have to watch out because the seat's gonna like hit you in the butt when you stand up. And there, in fact, are needle dispensers. And I use a line in the book that I created, which is, you know, if you're gonna do drugs in Switzerland, you know, the Swiss want you to be clean about it. It's so true. Okay, last one. Why do a second or third book? The reason for the second book was because I honestly loved the character Andre so much, and I loved Lars, that I wanted her to have both, and I had to think about a way for her to eventually have both. I got a lot of kind of angry comments about what I did to make that happen for the second book, and one of those very typically is a reader, if I know the person, or just Instagram, somebody will send me a note and say, I'm so mad at you, I can't believe you did this, and I've been mad at you for 3 or 4 days. I love that, honestly, because I do that as a reader of another author's book. I mean, if they do something that really makes me mad, I get kind of pissed off, and so I do get mad, and then they move on and they say, you know, they had to read the rest of it and they had to work through it. But the flip side of that is you've done a good job. If the reader is so invested in a character or the storyline that they get that emotional about it, if something happens to a character, then I've done my job. So the third book I'm actually writing right now, and it's proving to be a little bit more difficult only because I don't want it to end, but I am going to end it so I can keep going and doing other things. But it's just been a lot of fun. So that's why I needed yet a third book to really cement what Daniel's going to do and where she's going to go. Oh, last question. I'm just going to throw this in. So my mother thinks that every book that I write is based on me. And my husband tends to think that every character in the book is based on him. I just want to dispel both of those notions, that I am not any of these characters. And some of my sassiness perhaps is me, but these are definitely fictional people. And there are bits of my husband or people that I know in certain characters, but certainly not all. So that's a total misconception. There are people that I see, and truly individuals that I would love to know. I would love for them to be real, and sadly they're not, at least not in my life so far. So that's it. Thanks for the questions, everyone.